Hello everyone, I'm very pleased to be here today to speak to you about pacing, goal setting and motivation. My name is Penelope Cream. I'm a clinical health psychologist. I work in London in the UK. Clinical health psychologists specialise in working with people with complex medical conditions, and also they work with the clinical teams who look after those people. So I hope today I can give you a broad overview about pacing and activity management and give you some tips on how to do that. So what is pacing? It can mean different things in different contexts. It's a technique that you might have come across in different areas of medical help. It's used by physiotherapists, occupational therapists, certainly by psychologists, and you may have come across it if you've ever been helped by pain management or fatigue teams. I like to think of it as activity management, and I hope I can give you some tips on how to plan ahead and also in how to think how you'd like to use pacing. Some of you may have heard of spoon theory, which I'll come on to explain. So if for a moment you just hold this image in mind of these tangled multiple spoons all meshed together, quite heavy, quite clunky, I'm going to help you think about how to untangle them. So some of you, if you've heard of spoon theory before, may know that it was first described by Christine Miserandino in 2003. Christine has a very good blog called butyoudon'tlook.sick.com. Christine was trying to explain one day to a friend what life is like for her medical condition. Now, she has an autoimmune condition called lupus, which has a lot of overlapping features with many other long-term conditions, crushing fatigue, unexpected complications, a lot of healthcare appointments, and sometimes for many people, quite significant severe pain. Christine was trying to explain to her friends, she was in a restaurant, she was trying to explain why she couldn't do whatever her friend suggested or whatever she wanted to do. She took hold of spoons that were on the table and she tried to explain to her friend, I have 9 spoons here, for example. I will use 1 to get dressed, 1 to have a shower before I get dressed, 1 to make my breakfast, and then that will leave me with only a limited number of spoons to use for the rest of the day. I can't get any more spoons. So once I've used them up, that's it. I just have to stop and rest. So she explained to her friend that she counts her spoons out through the day and even through the week. If she has a particularly busy week, she'll have to hold some spoons back. And she talks about how she runs out of spoons and has to plan ahead, or even save spoons for something special or particularly exhausting. So I'm going to help you think a bit about how to plan your own spoons. It's quite useful to think what pacing means for you. It can be used in many different ways. In psychology, we tend to think of it in a very broad way. You may have come across it in pain management, where it might be a graded exercise approach. Or in rehab terms, if somebody's had an injury, they will be going back to the level of activity they might have achieved previously. As a psychologist, I tend to think of it as what do you want to do? How do you want your life to be that week, that month, that year? So we use it a lot for planning with people, and it can lead to increased stamina. It can certainly help with pain management, and it can help you plan towards goals that you might really hold dear, such as work or education, or even having a fantastic party one day. It can really look at social life, whether you have too much of a social life, whether you would like more of a social life, whether you want to see friends or family. And it helps you get a different perspective on fatigue management. It can help gain a sense of control. I think we all have weeks where we combine health problems with a busy life, with a busy schedule. And sometimes that can feel overwhelming. And that can lead to anxiety. Can I manage? How do I manage? How on earth do I control all of the different things that I need to juggle? And pacing can help with all of this. It can help rearrange your spoons. Think back to that tangled mess of heavy spoons and think what it would be like to count out your spoons. You might need smaller ones for smaller tasks like making breakfast, to a larger one to going for a work or job interview. One of the main things as a psychologist that I think about with people is, how do I feel about change? Pacing can sometimes be going very well for people. You might be approaching it for the first time. How do you feel? How do you feel about making significant changes to your week and your month? Are you excited? Are you frankly terrified? Are you curious about what pacing might be like for you? Do you feel that you're pretty skeptical about it because you've tried it before and it hasn't worked? Or you've heard people talk about it and it hasn't really felt that it's for you? Are you worried? Are you angry? Now, anger is a perfectly natural emotion. You may feel angry that you're in the position to have to even think about pacing and planning, whereas before you would enjoy a spontaneous week or month doing whatever you wanted. Are you frustrated because you've tried pacing before and it's just fallen flat on its face? Or is there a small part of you that feels optimistic? I think it's worth starting by thinking, what stage of pacing might you be at? Do you feel overwhelmed? Or are you somebody who's super organized and you've got pacing sorted? Frankly, I think most people are somewhere in the middle. And depending on the demands that we all face and the challenges, we may fluctuate between overwhelmed and organized and end up somewhere back in the middle. Are you already pacing? Do you want to tweak how you pace? Or could you do with some help? When we come to think about anything that is about activity management and focusing on making a change, there are always barriers and boosters. Now, some of these barriers or obstacles are ones that we can anticipate. We might know that next week something is going to happen that might make our routine very difficult. We might be having some medical treatment. We might have relatives to stay. There may be an exam or an interview. And some things we make happen ourselves, so we can plan for them. And then some just happen out of the blue. It can really be helpful to split things into internal and external factors. And I'll come on to talk a little bit about that in a minute. And sometimes it feels as if some of those factors, those barriers, those boosters are more within our control than others. And that's absolutely true. Pacing can help us plan for the unexpected as well as what we anticipate happening. How can we ease up those barriers, that obstacle that we know is there, but we just keep tripping over it? So let's think about the internal and external factors. Internal factors, as a psychologist, are of great interest to me. They are the things that we do almost without noticing. They might be emotional, they might be our thoughts, and they might be our behaviours. External factors may be to do with other people or our environment or events beyond our control. So let's look for a moment at internal impacts on motivation. You may be thinking, pacing sounds quite interesting. Maybe I'll manage more easily. But there may be a whole host of small things that you might not be thinking about that could be making you feel a bit reluctant. One of the most important things, particularly with a long-term health condition, is previous experiences. Those may involve whether other people have been encouraging or discouraging, whether you've had supportive healthcare, whether family and friends are helpful, how that leaves you feeling. Are you feeling really anxious about making change, or do you feel confident? Or are you lacking in confidence? Now, I'm not saying any of these things are right or wrong, they just are. And it's worth knowing whether those are things that might occur to you sometimes. How is your self-esteem? Do you feel that you can make the changes you want to? Do you feel judged? Or do you think people are judging you when perhaps they may not be at all? How is your pain? If you experience quite severe levels of pain or unexpected pain, we know there's quite a strong link between mood, and that also impacts on motivation. Are you experiencing significant levels of fatigue? That also can have an impact on mood. It's very hard to force yourself to do an entire week's planning if you're feeling exhausted and in pain, and especially if you're not feeling confident about how you can make changes. However, if you can put a little bit of change in place, that fatigue might start to feel more manageable, and the worry and the anxiety might also start to reduce a bit. Are you somebody who sets high standards for yourself? Do other people seem to expect high levels of performance from you? I'll come on in a bit to say more about high standards, because they're both useful and unhelpful, depending on how you're using them. Do you need some help, some more information, some more knowledge and skills about what you might want to plan? Do you need to know more about what pain will be linked to certain movements? Are you worried that if you start exercising, you might cause more damage? Who can you get the information from, for example? Are you somebody who says yes too often? Do you find yourself taking on other people's tasks or concerns? And do you say no too little, perhaps? All of those things are internal to you. They're very personal, they're very individual. And then there are the external factors that might have an impact on your motivation to feeling what goals you want to set and how you want to pace. Your environment is very important. Is it comfortable? Can you be mobile within it? Can you do what you want? Is it suitable for whatever you need? If you're someone who works, what are your managers and colleagues like? And is your work suitable for what you can actually do? And can you split that up into different parcels of time? Do you have family commitments? Are you a carer for somebody? Do you have children? Do you have relatives who expect to see you more than you actually feel you can commit to sometimes? Would you like more variability in the amount of time you spend with people? And the same goes for your social life. Are there friends you'd like to see but feel too exhausted to make contact with? Or are there friends that you know you would love to see and would like to see in a different way rather than them always expecting you to go out and when you may not feel like it? I put in the weather because we know that certain weather conditions can completely disrupt your plans. If you're someone who exercises outdoors, you might want to have some contingency plans indoors. Are you somebody whose pain reacts to the weather? Are you someone whose mood changes when the evenings are darker? So it's not so odd to put weather in there. Finances can put great demands on us. It depends whether somebody has sufficient money to do what they would like or if it's a constant worry. It's worth always thinking about what that is as a factor for you in what you feel able to plan. Have you got supportive medical team and healthcare providers? Would you like to have different ones? And how can you put that in place if so? Do you want to talk to your family doctor or GP, for example? And who might you be thinking of talking to about pacing? You might want to contact a psychologist, a physio, an occupational therapist, for example. And it's worth jotting down on a piece of paper who your wider support system is. With a lot of people that I talk to, I map it out like a spider diagram. Everybody in the support system, are they helpful or unhelpful? And what would you like to make a change in? So this brings me on to talk a little bit about how to help others help you. We all have people, on the whole, not everybody, but most people have people who really want to help. Are you someone who can tell them what you need? Are you someone who can say, actually, you know what would really make a difference to me for 1 hour a week? People make assumptions about what is helpful based on their own experiences. And I think it's very hard for them to understand, unless they experience it themselves, what it's like to have a long-term and often painful and exhausting medical condition, particularly one that has unexpected events included in it. I think it would be hard to really truly imagine what it would be like to experience crushing fatigue. We can all try to imagine it, but unless you've experienced it yourself, it's hard to really understand. So don't hold back. What would you find really, really helpful, truly helpful? Is it something practical? Is it something more emotional? Would you just like to sit down and have a conversation with somebody without having to worry about them becoming upset or to tell you what to do? Or is it something really ordinary seeming, but actually quite significant, such as eating a meal that you haven't had to cook yourself? Don't be afraid to ask for the basics, whether it's help with shopping, putting a child to bed, reading the bedtime story rather than you doing it every night? Or is it just having an hour to yourself to have a bath and watch TV? I'd like to recommend Jason Parry's work for the Ehlers-Danlos Society. He did a presentation, I think in 2017, on practical pacing and fatigue management. The YouTube recording is available of his presentation at the conference, and his slides are on the Society's website. Jason is a physiotherapist in London who specialises in hypermobility. And he's put together a very good presentation. So rather than reinventing the wheel, I have borrowed some slides from him. So here we have a diagram that shows the idea of boom and bust. This is really fundamental to pacing, and you may have seen it before. As you can see here, Jason has put in a downwards arrow, which may be surprising because this is about what you do when you have high levels of energy. As you can see, it's absolutely natural to take advantage of that time when you have more energy, less fatigue, more time perhaps. However, if you're unaccustomed to operating at that level, or that the demands are just too high, you're very likely the next day or 2 days later to feel exhausted and to really feel as if you're paying for that time. What Jason has shown is that this trend, when you keep taking advantage of better days and then keep recovering from them, can actually lead you to an average lower level of activity. And this underactivity cycle starts to then perpetuate. You can become quite frightened of doing too much. So you protect yourself, you avoid doing things. You remember I said avoidance can be quite an important factor in pacing, until your actual level of activity is lower than you started out with. So one way around this is map out everything that you do in the week. Plot out family time, social time with friends, whether you work, you're at university or college, whether you go to school, and whether you've got other responsibilities towards other people. Put in everything like your healthcare appointments, your doctor appointments, physiotherapy, whatever it is, and build in things like exercise. Add in all the everyday activities. So having a shower or bath, thinking back to the spoon theory of Christine Miserandino, how she mapped out having a shower, getting dressed. Put in things like shopping, talking to people, whether you're driving or taking public transport, time to prepare food, time to eat it. Time in front of a screen, whether that's emailing, social media, watching TV, walking the dog or interacting with other pets, and doing the housework. Map out absolutely everything that you might be doing in a week. And most importantly, don't forget to add in relaxation time. Jason was working with a patient in his clinic, and he asked them to map out a timetable. And it was a 7-day-a-week timetable from early in the morning until they went to bed at night at 10 o'clock-ish. Now, he asked the patient to use a traffic light system. So everything that the person found really hard and exhausting and painful, perhaps, to put in red. Everything that was still difficult, but not quite at the red level, to put in as amber. And then all the other times and tasks, such as watching TV, going to bed, talking to a friend, mapping green. As you can see here, this person had all the hard work of the red blocks put into the first part of the week from Monday to Thursday. They then spent the weekend recovering and put in green time. What Jason did was encourage the person to look again, to look at how they could break up the red, the green, the amber, so that it was much more equally distributed. Think of it as compensatory balance. For every red block, try to put an amber or definitely a green block. You may need to be resting as much as you're working. That works quite well for a lot of people because that also adds in the possibility of unexpected events. So try doing that for yourself. It may take a little bit of time and you may find that you have a week that varies quite a lot. Put in the basics, put in your consistent same things like putting the kids to bed, reading, TV, preparing food and work, whatever they are, and then try and add in the others around it. I'm not making this sound too difficult, I hope, but I'm also thinking this is not easy. And it would be really silly of me to pretend that this is something that can be put in place overnight. There are always challenges. So think for yourself if you're finding this a bit of a struggle. Do I set myself high standards? Do I find it hard to change? Do I think people are assuming things about me? Do I hate asking for help? Ask yourself, perhaps, would you hate asking for help if you didn't have a medical condition that people knew about? And also, I find it useful to say, how would you feel if you were asked to help somebody? I'm imagining most of you would say, I'd feel absolutely fine. I would love to do what everyone would find most helpful. Do I avoid certain situations? That goes back to this idea of avoidance can be both helpful and unhelpful. We could protect ourselves by avoiding situations that cause us both emotional and physical difficulty. This is a completely normal response. As I said earlier, as a psychologist, I'm always thinking of things as both helpful and unhelpful. That's not that they're good or bad, it's just in different situations, different factors can represent a different outlook. In the same way that high standards can be both helpful and unhelpful. You've all got to where you are today by having high standards, by having perfection tendencies. We wouldn't pass exams, we wouldn't have jobs, we wouldn't even be attending this conference if we didn't set ourselves a certain standard that we wanted to achieve. But sometimes life gets in the way. And sometimes it can be helpful to say, I can be good enough. I don't have to be perfect today. Spend a little time thinking if you do these things. We all do them. You're not going to be on your own. Take small steps. You do not have to do this overnight. It's worth taking the time to really plan it out. And if you've got somebody or several people that you would like to plan this out with, all the better. Or you might find it's easier as a private process, but it's very individual to you. And it's fine to introduce the changes gradually. Think, what can I control myself? And what do I need help from other people to make a change with? Now, in psychology, we spend a lot of time thinking about the I should thoughts. We all have them, and it's what we set our standards by, it's what we push ourselves with, but it's also what we tell ourselves off using. Examples of the I should thoughts, for example, might be, I should always be on time. I should always work 5 days a week. I should always do the cooking. I should always come top in my exams. Whatever it is, catch those I should thoughts, think about them, think if there's an alternative. I should pace because everybody else wants me to. Or actually, maybe I could pace because it might make a change for me that's just for me. Be realistic. This is not about completely changing your life overnight. What small changes can you put in place? And be kind to yourself. This is not an exam. This is a process of seeing how your week can be a bit different to help you manage longer term, to get you more stamina, to get you better pain control and better fatigue management. It is possible to take back control. You may well be feeling overwhelmed, especially after the very difficult year or so that everybody has had. You may feel that some things are out of your reach. Break everything down into small chunks. Stop the cascade. Take a break. Take stock. Get out your traffic light pens and your pieces of paper and just map out what you would like. It's most important to think, what would you like, not what you feel you should be doing. They're not necessarily always the same thing. And then maybe things will start to feel a bit more ordered, a bit like that second timetable that Jason has shared. So I wish you the greatest of luck with pacing. Be kind to yourselves and don't expect results overnight, but it will make a difference. Thank you very much.